welcome to my kitchen. My name is Andrea, and today for the holidays I'm going to show you how to make my famous cinnamon rolls. I have been making cinnamon rolls for Christmas for probably almost 30 years. It was just something I wanted to try to make. I had never made cinnamon rolls. My mom, I don't recall ever making cinnamon rolls. So I found a recipe somewhere, tried it out, worked out some kinks along the way over the years of just little tricks that seem to just yield a better cinnamon roll. So typically at the holidays, I'm usually making 4, 5, 6 batches of cinnamon rolls, and each batch usually makes about 2 dozen. So I like to give treats to family and friends, and one of the things that they always get are cinnamon rolls, and it seems to be something that they enjoy, and I would hate to not make them. So might be a little bit of a disappointment. So we're gonna get started. I have already got my milk, my whole milk, 2 cups in a saucepan that I've warmed up. Now you don't want it hot, you don't even want to scald it. You just want it warm enough that, as I would say, the baby bottle test, to where when you put it on your wrist, you can't feel it. It doesn't feel hot, it doesn't feel cold. It just sits there, so it's just right. I've also got some water in my tea kettle that I warmed up. Same thing, you want it to just be warm, not hot, not cold. If your milk and your water are cold, your yeast won't activate, and if it's too hot, it will kill your yeast. So you won't get your dough to rise. So you could use a thermometer, and I never used a thermometer. One year I tried after taking some culinary classes, and I was like, I'm going to do this the right way and use a thermometer. And honestly, they didn't turn out as nice. So I chucked the thermometer and went back to my just testing it on my wrist, and that seems to work great for me. So if it doesn't work great for you, and you want to use a thermometer, you're going to want your water and your milk between 105 and 115 degrees. So that'll kind of give you a gauge for that. So I'm going to try something different because I'm not using a clear glass bowl. I'm using a stainless bowl. You're not going to be able to see through it to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to get the camera and set it up so that you can see exactly what's going on in the bowl. So, all right, at the right temperature. And I've gone on ahead and got my oven on the bread proofing setting. If your oven does not have a bread proofing setting, then there's a couple of different things you can do. You can turn your oven on at about between 2 and 250, and then prop your door open with like a wooden spoon or something, and then you'll be able to set your bowl with your dough on top. If your oven is like mine and it's going to beep at you because the door is open, you could turn it up to about 300 with the door closed, and then set your dough on top. You're just wanting it to be where there's a lot of warmth to allow your dough to rise. If it's not warm enough in your house and you don't have your oven on, then it may not be enough to get it to rise what you need it to be. So, but the bread proofing setting actually works perfect if you have that. So I have a large stainless steel bowl, and to that bowl I am going to add 2 packs of active dry yeast. Now, your dry yeast, the way I buy it, it comes in like a 3-pack. So just cut one section off. You can use that for another batch. So I just need the 2 sections. So I'm just going to cut that open, and then I'm just going to dump that right into the bowl. And then I've tested my water. I don't feel it at all. So I'm going to add the water to the yeast and just kind of let it dissolve. So it doesn't take but just a minute for it to dissolve. Just kind of give it a little bit of a stir because it'll kind of clump together just a little bit. And I just like to use a wooden spoon, especially if I'm using a stainless steel bowl. A wooden spoon is going to be great so you're not scratching on the metal. So there we go. And then I'm going to add my 2 cups of warm milk. And again, when I put it on my wrist, I could not feel it at all. So I'm just going to add the 2 cups in there. And then to that, we are going to add 1/3 of a cup of sugar. That sugar is going to kind of help that yeast to really activate. The yeast will feed off of the sugar. And then we're going to add 1/3 of a cup of vegetable oil. Ooh, just about lost that spoon in there. Just stir that a little bit. And then we are going to add some salt. So that is 2 teaspoons of salt. And 2. And then 3 teaspoons of baking powder. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Now typically when I'm baking, I'm going to mix my salt and my baking powder and all that with my flour. But for this, you don't want to do it that way. So add it there. Just kind of stir it. It's going to get really foamy and bubbly. Part of that is mostly just the baking powder. Okay. And then we're going to add 1 egg. So just a whole egg. Just add that right in there. And then just kind of chop out a little bit. Now at this point we're going to start adding our flour. Now this is going to take 5 to 6 cups of flour. So it's going to depend, there's a lot of variables there, so it's going to depend on how warm your kitchen is. It's going to depend on how much humidity is in the air as well. So first I'm just going to start off with 2 cups of all-purpose flour and just kind of get that stirred in there. And I like to just kind of scrape the sides just to make sure that you're getting everything in and that you're not leaving anything on the outside there. Okay. All right, so now we're going to add, make sure that spoon doesn't slide too far. There we go. So we're going to add a couple more cups. There's 1. And 2. And I'm going to go ahead, so that makes a total of 4. And I'm going to go ahead and scoop up 2 more just so I have it ready. There we go. All right. So we've got 4 cups of flour already in the bowl. So my dad told me once that apparently my grandma used to make cinnamon rolls every year at Christmas time. Now, I don't have any recollection of that, so she must have stopped doing that at some point in time. But my dad always enjoyed getting cinnamon rolls at Christmas, so I'd always take him some. And then he would save them because I would spend Christmas Eve at his house, and he would save those for his breakfast Christmas morning when he opened presents with my sisters and my stepmom. So, all right, so we've got 4 in, so we're going to go ahead and add our 5th one. So he always felt like I was carrying on a tradition, even though I had no idea that there was a tradition there. So I just love cinnamon rolls. Good cinnamon rolls. Growing up, there was a lady at my church that made cinnamon rolls for everything. So whether it was sunrise service for Easter or any other kind of special occasion or just like a breakfast, she was always making cinnamon rolls, and they were always so good. So that's probably where I got my desire to make my own cinnamon rolls. So, all right, so this is cup number 6. So I'm just going to put about half of that in. Just mix it. And you may find that you even need to add more than 6 cups, so, but you just want to do a little bit at a time. All right, so this is the last, so that makes a total of 6 cups, so that's the last of the 6th cup. All right, now for the messy part. So I'm just going to wash my hands real good first. Not that my hands weren't already clean, but all right. And if you have rings on, you definitely want to take them off for this. There's no way you could get this messiness in your rings, so, okay. So usually I work with one hand so that I can use the other one to get more flour if I need it. So at this point, the recipe says to go ahead and turn it out onto a well-floured board so that you can start kneading it. Well, I am not big on having to clean up big messes. I just don't like to. It's not that I don't like to clean it up. I don't like to make the big messes if I don't have to. So I use a really big bowl so that I can do the kneading part in here. And I'm sure that there are some purists that say, no, you can't do it that way, but I've been doing it that way for 30 years and it works great. So why change now, right? Let me get some of this off. So I've been sprinkling a little bit of flour in. It's not even been a half a cup yet. So if you are using a board and you're rolling it out, then you're going to be adding quite a bit of flour at that point. You just don't want to add too much, otherwise your dough, your cinnamon rolls could be tough. So, but you got to have enough so that it's not like this. So, very sticky. Nice and messy. And you can see why I washed my hands. Because, you know. Okay. I'm going to scoop up, try to scoop up just a little bit more flour just in case I need some more. All right. So when I'm kneading it, really I'm just looking for it to come together and not be so sticky. We're getting really close. So you can see it's kind of starting to form into a ball. Still pretty sticky, but it's getting there. All right. So you can kind of see how it's pretty elasticy. Still fairly sticky, but it's pretty much right where I want it, just because I don't want it overly dry. So I'm just going to get as much of this off and then wash my hands. And I've got another stainless steel bowl that I'm going to oil down and transfer this to so that it can rise. If you don't have another bowl, you can just sprinkle a little bit of flour on your counter and then scoop up your dough and set it on that. That way it doesn't stick to your counter. And then you can wash this bowl out, dry it out, and then oil it down. So let me get this off. All right, so I have another bowl. This one's smaller, but it will work just fine. It's the one I usually use for it. So we're just going to use some shortening and kind of just wipe it all down. So just kind of oil it up. This will keep, as your dough is rising, it will keep it from sticking and being a gooey mess. You don't need a ton, you just need it to be completely covered. So, all right. So we're gonna take this one, we're just gonna dump it in. This probably looks weird, there we go. So I'm just going to kind of form it into a ball just a little bit, and then I'm going to flip it over, and then we're just going to take and add just a little bit more shortening, just like that. Okay. So at this point we are going to cover this in plastic wrap. Now, if you don't have plastic wrap or you don't like using plastic wrap, you can use a tea towel. You just want to get your tea towel wet and then squeeze out all the water. Just wring it out and then lay it over. You might have to even get it wet, you know, once or twice in between, just depending. I've never used the tea towel inside the oven for the proofer, so you might just keep an eye. Although that temperature is pretty low, so it would probably be okay. I started using the plastic wrap and it just works great. So I'm just going to take another piece. To this side. There you go. All right. So I'm just going to put it in the oven on the proofer. And I just put it in the center rack, and then we're going to let it proof for 90 minutes. So that's an hour and a half. So that gives you plenty of time to clean up and get ready for the next step. I've already got butter set out at room temperature. I have 4 sticks of butter set out, 2 sticks for my buttercream frosting that we'll make here in a little bit, and then the other 2 for the sugar cinnamon mixture. So, and I'm going to go ahead and make that just so that it's ready to go. So let me grab a bowl. And just some granulated sugar. And some cinnamon. Just grab a spoon. All right. So there's no set amount for this. I like a lot of cinnamon sugar in my cinnamon rolls. So I'm just going to put in quite a bit there. If I were measuring, let's see what that would measure out as. So you can measure out a cup of sugar. Like I said, this part I don't ever measure, so, but for you, I will measure it. So 1 cup of sugar. And then a lot of cinnamon. So let's see what we got here. This is 1/3 of a cup, so. You don't want to go too overboard on the cinnamon because it will at some point get a little spicy. I did that once. It was just a little too much. But I like to have a lot of cinnamon in it. So I usually do the visual test. So this is 1 cup of sugar and 1/3 of a cup of cinnamon. And just mix it up. I want it to have a nice, dark color, and that actually looks almost spot on. So you just want to be able to see that it has sugar in it, but the sugar is, kind of brown with the cinnamon. So that's a good amount, I think. Okay. And if we don't use all of this in our rolls, then I just put it in a container with a lid on it and throw it in the cabinet. At Christmas time, when I'm making my multiple batches, it's fine. I'm going to use most of it, but I'll put some extra in, if you make some cinnamon toast or make something else that you want cinnamon sugar in. So, and you don't have to mix it up. It's already done. So our cinnamon roll dough has risen an hour and a half. So just go ahead and pull the plastic off of this. Now I did go ahead and prepare 2 sheet trays. So these are about 18 by 13. We just call them sheet trays. They're used in restaurants and bakeries, but you can buy them on Amazon, a restaurant store where you can go in and purchase will carry them. They have them at Sam's Club. They probably have them at Costco too. So I'm going to tip the camera down again so that you can see the process of rolling out the dough and getting it prepared. in cutting it into the rolls. So, okay, so here is our dough. Now usually it will rise and fill the entire pan, so I'm not quite as happy with it, but here we go. All right, so I'm just going to take the dough like this, and then I am going to divide it in half. So just gonna kind of just take it like so. Try to divide it in half as best as you can. Now for this part, so we're going to roll it out, and I am going to get just a tiny bit of flour. It doesn't take much. So you can use whatever surface works best for you for rolling out. I have this marble board that my mom got me many years ago. And I have found that it works great because I know I can roll it out to this particular size and get the number of cinnamon rolls I want out of it. So it is slick, so underneath it I've just taken a couple of paper towels, got them wet, squeezed it out, laid it there so that my board doesn't move when I'm rolling it. So I've got a rolling pin. You can use whatever. I like the French style rolling pin, the all-in-one. I just like it. So, all right. So we're going to take half of our dough. And I'm just going to kind of work it out here just a little bit. Just trying to kind of get it to where it doesn't have thick spots. It's kind of hard to do, but okay. Set this aside. All right, so we're just gonna roll it out. And I am just rolling it out to the edges. And sometimes it goes over the edge just a little bit, and that's all right. This half of the dough is probably a little bit less than the other half, so the other one will probably come over a little bit more. Okay, so I've got it that right size. I've got 1 stick of room temperature butter, and it's super soft, and that's what you want. You don't want it melted. So your best deal is when you're starting your rolls to just go ahead and set it out so it can be softening up. And I'm just using an offset spatula like I would use for decorating cakes. I'm just going to spread it on here. I don't like to use melted butter because then everything just kind of runs out. So the butter, when it's softened, will kind of hold a little bit. So it's going to hold your cinnamon sugar a little better. And yes, I use the whole stick for this half. Try to get it fairly close to the edge, but not all the way. Otherwise, your dough won't stick to itself. There we go. Okay. So now we're just going to take some of our cinnamon sugar, and we're going to use a good amount of this. Don't be stingy. They are cinnamon rolls, you know. Just going to sprinkle it on, just giving it a nice coating. Okay. Now we're just going to take our dough and just kind of gather it like so, gently, and just start to roll it. I always like to roll it towards me. That's just how I've always done it. So it seems like it would be difficult to roll it the other way, but if it works for you, go ahead. So I kind of lift it up just a little bit as I'm rolling it, just to make sure it's not sticking. Now once I get to the end here, I'm going to take the other end and I'm going to bring it around and I'm just going to pinch it. Just bring it around and pinch it. You're just kind of pinching it into the other part just so it kind of seals it. Okay. So I'm just going to move it and I'm going to get a sharp knife. And I want to make sure I get about 12, at least 12. So I will usually kind of just go along and score it a little bit. Okay, it's not going to quite. So just gently, and I will kind of just hold the other one just so that I can get it to cut. Because you don't want to just smash through it because you'll squish them. So, you know, if you do that, it's just going to squish it. So, and I'm just using a regular knife. Don't use a serrated knife because it will catch it and tear it. So just make sure you have a sharp knife, watch your fingers, and just a gentle sawing motion to get through it. And I'm going to place these on my sheet. I did use some Crisco and I greased the sheet. And you can see how much cinnamon sugar is in there. That's what you want. That's a cinnamon roll. Okay, and that was my oven beeping, letting me know that I'm preheated to 350 degrees. So I am just setting these on here, and I actually only got, let's see, 9 to 11 out of this, but the other half of my dough I know is a little bit heavier, so I should be able to make up for that. All right, so I'm just going to brush this off. And just sprinkle a little bit of flour here, just a little bit. And then our second half of our dough. Okay. You never know what you're gonna get when you're dealing with yeast doughs. Sometimes you can do everything right and it still doesn't quite come out the way you want it. So you never know how fresh the yeast really is that you buy in the store. Although when I'm making cinnamon rolls, I always make sure I just buy yeast. I don't buy a ton of it to keep on hand because I want it to be as fresh as possible. All right. So this one is just a little bit bigger. I just don't want it to cut through the edges of the board, so I'm just kind of loosening it up a little bit. Okay, here's our second stick of butter. Since I have a little bit on the edges, I'm just going to go just a little bit. Oops, my dog's barking out there. I don't know if you can hear her. She's a big dog, so she has a big bark. Sure we've got butter coverage everywhere here. All right. All right. And we just have a little bit of cinnamon left, so I'll just put that in a container in the cupboard for something later. So you can see there's not much left, so. Okay. And then again, we're just going to pinch the ends here. To seal it off. And you can actually cut these as big as you would like. I mean, if you want bigger rolls, then you can, cut them thicker. They'll rise. I've had some that were pretty tall. So I'm usually making these for gifts, so I'm usually trying to get a good amount out of a batch without skimping, too much. So. Alright, so we made up for the one that we were short on the other one, so I think I can get all of these on one tray. here so you can see. See how well this goes. There we go. So we got all 24 on this one tray. So since I turned my oven up to 350 degrees, these need to raise again for 30 minutes before we bake them. So obviously I can't put them in the oven because it's way too hot. So what I like to do is just set them on the back of the oven so that they get that heat from the oven, but it's indirect. So I'm going to set the timer 30 minutes, and then when I come back, we'll put them in the oven, and then I will make so our cinnamon rolls have sat for their second rise, and that was 30 minutes, and you can see that they have risen and doubled in size. So I'm going to pop these in the oven for 20 minutes, and while we're letting those bake, I'm going to make the buttercream frosting for them. So for the buttercream, I'm really going for not a stiff buttercream since we're not piping this, we're not decorating a cake. So just a soft, simple buttercream is what we'll go for. So I have 2 sticks of room temperature butter. I'm just going to put those in the stand mixer and put my paddle attachment on, and I'm just going to let this mix up just for a few, maybe 30 seconds. All right, so I have 3 cups of sifted powdered sugar, so I'm just going to put part of that in there. And just add a little bit more. And then I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And then I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of whole milk. And I'm just going to kind of scrape this all down. Get the powdered sugar off the sides. Alright, so I just let that whip on a medium-high speed for a minute or so. Let's see how it is. Yep. That's a good consistency for what we're using it for. It would be a little too soft if we were decorating cakes or cupcakes, but for this we want it to melt into the cinnamon rolls, so it's just perfect. So So we've still got about 15 minutes or so on our rolls. So when we come back, we'll finish it off for you. Our cinnamon rolls baked for 20 minutes. I've let them set for about 5 minutes just to cool down just a little bit. I still want them warm because I want that frosting to just melt down into them. But you can see they filled the pan, so that's what you want. So let's just put our frosting on here, and it's going to start melting. And I just want to kind of make sure that everyone gets a fair amount of frosting. The tops always sound a little crunchy, but once the frosting is on there, then it helps to soften it back up. So obviously you can make these any time of the year. I just have always made them just for Christmas. It's a rarity that I ever make them during any other part of the year other than Christmas, so that kind of keeps them special. Plus you're not overindulging. The end ones are always the hardest ones to frost. Alright, so once you've made sure that all of them have some frosting on them, then the rest of the frosting you can just kind of go back through and add to any that you think maybe needs just a little more. Try to get some on the sides, but it does tend to wind to run off of my pan, so. So it's not a quick thing to make, but I think that's what makes it more special. Just because it does take a fair amount of time. So whoever you're making them for knows that they mean a lot to you for you to take and spend your day in the kitchen baking cinnamon rolls. Alright, so we're just going to try and get one of these out of here. Let's go for this one. So you can see just how delicious that is. I'm going to just, it's still pretty hot, tear that open so you can see that it does have quite a bit of cinnamon in there. And it tastes wonderful. So I know this is a longer video, but I hope that you've enjoyed watching it and learning how to make cinnamon rolls from scratch. They're quite delightful. So I hope that you have a wonderful Christmas whether you do much baking or you don't, whatever you do, just your time spent with the people that you love and care about is the most important part. So that's really what Christmas is all about, is just spending time with others and sharing memories and just enjoying your time away from work. You know, leave all that behind. So and just enjoy your family and your friends. So until next time.